Welcome to the CEC Report. It's the 15th of December. I'm Robert Barwick and I'm joined today by CEC leader Craig Isherwood. Welcome, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
In this week's CEC Report, peace is not to be feared. And Uber, a big fat parasitical scam. But Craig, before we begin, I thought that I would be announcing our final bit of bad news for the year on Channel 31, that this would be it, as we've been preparing people for the last few weeks in a row. Our regular viewers would know that. But lo and behold, we've got some good news.
Well, Robbie, hang on to your chairs. The CEC report is going to continue on Channel 31 or 44 until next June.
At least next June.
At least next June, because the government, the communications minister has done a backflip, and the free-to-air Channel 31 or 44 is going to stay on air till that time. So that is unbelievable. I mean, we all sort of fell off our chairs and we heard, because we thought it was a done deal, but it's not.
So we don't know what's going on in Canberra.
No.
So therefore we're not going to take back all the bad things we've said about Malcolm Turnbull. He
No.
probably still deserves them. However, this is great, and let's hope they still don't get their act together by 6 months' time, and we can continue providing this free-to-air service to the public. So there you go. That said, we still encourage people, watch us on Channel 31, but you can also get us on YouTube and on our website, as we've been saying. And secondly, before I begin, just a reminder, what we go through on the CEC report, you can usually find covered in depth in our weekly magazine, the Australian Alert Service. So if you see something that you want more information on, I'm always recommending, reading up more information. Call in on the toll-free number to get a free copy. You get a free copy of this if you haven't called in before. All right, so Craig, let's begin. First, peace is not to be feared. And this is an apt subject for Christmas, Craig, because it is Christmas, peace on earth, goodwill to all men. Well, that's not what you're seeing right now. Ironically, because we are actually closer to peace than to war for a very long time. If you've been watching the media, which I'm sure you have witnessed in the last week or so an absolutely hysterical meltdown, and it's in the form of this freak out in the United States about Russia supposedly hacking the US presidential election. Now, first of all, just to put that to bed, in this week's alert service, we reprint the statement of a group called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, who have come out with a memorandum saying, look, this is all bunkum. And they make the point that if the CIA had evidence, it would show it. It wouldn't use these things like, oh, we have confidence that, etc. The NSA, National Security Agency in America, monitors every single bit of electronic communication in and out of the United States. There's no way that if there was this massive hacking going on, they wouldn't know about it, Craig.
Right? Rob, it also defies any sort of reason. I mean, because look, how is Russia actually going to interfere in the mass strike that's just taken place? You're talking about millions upon millions of people that are fed up with the state of politics in their country. They're fed up with the political elites selling out jobs, crashing the economy, and paying trillions to the big banks in order to keep them afloat. Now, to say that this is all just a conspiracy by Russia to take over United States for the sake of Russia defies any sort of reason.
And what they're trying to do is undermine what's happened. They're hoping to poison the well completely.
Yep, that's the whole purpose. This is a complete propaganda campaign by the neoconservatives, who have now lost the push for war that they were so rapidly pushing prior to that election.
And that's what we're going to go through, because the people that are making the biggest deal about this are the people that have invested everything in the last decade or so, a bit more than that probably, actually more than that, this neocon element in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in war with Russia primarily, and also China, because that allows them to justify, if they've got that enemy image, they can justify anything they want to do, and that is about to be taken away from them. Right?
If anything the Australian people should have learnt by now is that watching the media for any information whatsoever, which is considered
why you need to
legitimate,
tune into Channel 31,
is dangerous.
Well, the media has invented a term called fake news, which, as it turns out, applies to what they've done to us for decades. All right, so let's
can't
have
trust it, yeah.
One of the things I want to point out is there was this. One of the ironies here is there was this hysteria that because Trump's this loose cannon, him in the White House would make the world a more dangerous place. When ironically, it was already a very dangerous place that most people were in denial about, and we were screaming about on this program. We were quoting people like Malcolm Fraser, warning of nuclear war and things like that, because it already was that under the Bush, then followed by Obama, and what Hillary was going to continue. Trump is going to, everything he's indicated so far is going to make the world a better place in terms of war and peace.
Well, just on that subject, Robbie, the fact that he put in Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, as the head of the National Security Agency is a very, very important move, because this was the same General Michael Flynn that warned Obama that if you go and get rid of the Assad regime in Syria, then you're going to end up with an Islamic caliphate across the entirety of that region.
Yep.
And he was booted out because of that. So
that's exactly what happened.
Donald Trump's made it very clear in his speech on the October 26th to the North Carolina before the election was had that he was not going to have a bar of this war agenda. And he was very, very plain on that. So what he's now doing is putting into place exactly what he said he was going to do and pull America back from being in the front lines of all these unnecessary regime change wars.
So let's look at the specifics, Craig. He has just picked as his Secretary of State the head of ExxonMobil, who I never thought I'd be happy about. However, the head of ExxonMobil happens to be a very good friend of Vladimir Putin, right? That means straight away by that appointment there is less tension between the United States and Russia. That's very good.
Also, he's the head of a large corporation, and Trump's intention is to rebuild the US economy. You're going to need the doyens of industry to do this, Robbie, just like Curtin and Chifley selected Essington Lewis during the war to become the head of the munitions
department. They were
department.
criticised for that by their Labor rank and file, except they knew he knew how to run the
That's the
job,
point,
and that's why
and you've got to do that. If you intend to make something work, you can't put lawyers in charge of those sorts of areas. You've got to actually get people who know what to do.
Now, Craig, Trump has indicated for all along that he was wanting to be on friendly relations with Russia. China has seemed more ambiguous because he's been critical of China in terms of trade and a number of things. And so people wonder, what's Trump going to be like with China? Well, he's indicated what he's going to be like because he's picked for the US ambassador to China is a state governor in America who actually happens to be the president of China's very, very, very close friend, going back to the 1980s when the president of China studied agricultural science in the United States. And this guy is his very close friend. He's going to be the ambassador. So that bodes well for peace between the United States and Russia, which is very good.
Again, Trump is a businessman, and he's having a completely different outlook on what is actually establishing relationships between the United States and China. Now, we don't know how it's all going to play out, because he had said things like he's going to reintroduce 35% tariffs on Chinese goods and so forth. And I think it's very, very early days, and you can't predict anything in terms of what Trump's going to do. But the intention from these appointments is that he doesn't want to do it in a confrontational, militaristic sort of fashion like the previous administrations have done. He wants to do it in a collaborative way so that, in a sense, there's a win-win solution here.
Now, as we said though, there's a lot invested in having combat and a militaristic outlook, and in having tension with countries, because then it justifies all sorts of stuff, including massive military spending. So we're going to put up on the screen, Donald Trump caused a real freak out this week when he's tweeted this criticism of the F35 Joint Strike Fighter project, which is the biggest military boondoggle in history. It's costing every country involved in it quinzillions of dollars. There's a new term for you, look it up, quinzillions, I've just coined it. Australia has put up stacks of money for this. It's a white elephant that's supposed to fly, that's never been, that's not even completed yet. And Trump said, this looks like garbage. And all the people that have invested heavily in this, I go, oh, right. So this is an example of the type of thing that's at stake here, just to make that point. So let's look at the freakout, the specific freakout. And we're going to zoom in on this particular character, Senator John McCain. So this is, I have to play this. This was on the project in Australia, on Channel 10, the project this week. They had to look at their reaction, because it just shows what an idiot John McCain made of himself. This is John McCain's reaction to Trump's appointment of Rex Tillerson from ExxonMobil, or pick of that guy to be Secretary of State. Yep.
And as we heard earlier, Rex Tillerson has been put forward as Secretary of State, despite concerns he's too close to Russia and Vladimir Putin. So what does Senator John McCain think about Tillerson? Well, he's on the fence.
I am concerned about his relationship with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is a thug, a murderer, a KGB guy who only wants to restore the Russian Empire, who has killed, murdered Boris Nemtsov, the leader of the opposition, in the shadow of the Kremlin. His equipment shot down an airliner. He's dismembered the Ukraine. Russian planes are now pinpointing and bombing hospitals in Aleppo. So, of course, I am concerned, but we should give him a fair hearing.
And that total freak-out rant is what these people like McCain have been doing against Putin for years. I remember in Rupert Murdoch's Herald Sun in 2001, one of their columnists calling Putin then Hitler, right? 2001, he just became the president. Then he hadn't done anything. Now, I had my own taste of this freak-out, Craig, this week. I tweeted a response to a Newsweek reporter named Kurt Eichenwald. And he was promoting an article that he's put in Newsweek this week saying that Trump's business ties will undermine US interests. And the reason why is because he says, basically, he doesn't say it this way, but this is effectively what they're meaning. Because Trump has business ties with countries like Russia, he's going to want peace with Russia instead of bomb the crap out of them. And that's going to be bad for American interests, right? So I just, you could see the Newsweek on the screen. I just pointed out in my tweet that the same Newsweek was the magazine that embarrassed itself by its cover the day after the election that said, Madam President, right? Because they got it completely wrong. In response, he flipped the lid, this guy, and he rattled off 8 tweets claiming that they weren't embarrassed, and then he blocked me. Now, he's got thousands of followers, so what happened was all his followers jumped on the bandwagon against me, which was funny. But I wanted to highlight 2 of the tweets from 2 of his followers because they were the funniest. And these were 2 Americans who questioned me for meddling in US politics.
Oh, Robbie.
Right? What are you doing meddling in our affairs? So this brings us back to John McCain. Let's just quickly go through John McCain's CV because, are Russians meddling in US politics? Is Robbie Barwick meddling in US politics by making this tweet? Well, John McCain, he is the king of meddling in elections. He's the chairman of the International Republican Institute, which is one of the American democracy NGOs that interferes in elections around the world. In 2011, he put out this tweet, this is in December after Britain, France, and the United States had used lies and this fake Arab Spring to go and overthrow Gaddafi and kill him, which has now been exposed as a whole pack of lies. He tweeted this threat to Putin that we're going to do the same to you, right? This is McCain doing it to Russia, what he's complaining about Russia may have done to them. This is a picture now of John McCain in 2012 with Syrian rebels who are actually jihadists that he was geeing up to go and topple, Assad. The guy on the right he got a lot of criticism for this because that guy on the right happened to be from an organisation that at that very moment was holding 11 Lebanese civilians as hostages for ransom because that's the way they operated, right? They're a pack of barbarians, these jihadists. And then finally, just quickly, here is John McCain with Ollie Tyahnybok, who's one of the neo-Nazis that America backed to run a coup in Ukraine against a democratically elected government in 2014. And an actual neo-Nazi who goes and does this and goose steps and whatever. And here's McCain sharing a podium with him at the Euromaidan in Kiev. So those are the people that have freaked out about what's happening in the US right now. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this subject. Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're discussing peace is not to be feared. So I want to play 2 video clips right now. The first is Samantha Power, the UN ambassador to the United Nations, the US ambassador to the United Nations. She is regurgitating these lies, these accusations that now that Syria has fallen, Craig, which is part of the Trump effect of, frankly, as well, they're now saying, the Syrians are murdering everybody, mass executions, etc. So listen to her.
To the Assad regime, Russia and Iran, your forces and proxies are carrying out these crimes. Your barrel bombs and mortars and airstrikes have allowed the militia in Aleppo to encircle tens of thousands of civilians in your ever-tightening noose. It is your noose. 3 member states of the UN contributing to a noose around civilians. It should shame you. Instead, by all appearances, it is emboldening you. You are plotting your next assault. Are you truly incapable of shame? Is there literally nothing that can shame you? Is there no act of barbarism against civilians, no execution of a child that gets under your skin, that just creeps you out a little bit? Is there nothing you will not lie about or justify?
The best response to her is from a journalist on the ground named Eva Bartlett, an independent Canadian journalist. She was at the UN the same week. Look what she says in response to all of these lies.
When you talk about the Syrian people and what the Syrian people want, how can you quantify that? Do you have any independent surveys where you can actually document that? And secondly, you talk about the corporate media, the Western media, the lies, and all of this. Could you explain what you think might be the agenda from us in the Western media, and why we should lie, why the international organizations on the ground should lie, why we shouldn't believe all these absolutely documentable facts that we see from the ground, these hospitals being bombed, these civilians who are talking about the atrocities that they have been experiencing. How can you justify calling all of us liars?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, there are certainly honest journalists amongst the very compromised establishment media. Let's start with your second question. So, international organizations on the ground. Tell me which ones are on the ground in eastern Aleppo. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you, there are none. There are none. These organizations are relying on the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Coventry, UK, and which is one man. They're relying on compromised groups like the White Helmets, which, let's talk about the White Helmets. The White Helmets were founded in 2013 by a British ex-military officer. They have been funded to the tune of $100 million by the US, UK, and Europe, and other states. They purport to be rescuing civilians in eastern Aleppo and Idlib, yet no one in eastern Aleppo has heard of them. And I say no one, bearing in mind that now 95% of these areas of eastern Aleppo are liberated. The White Helmets purport to be neutral, yet they can be found carrying guns and standing on the dead bodies of Syrian soldiers. And their video footage actually contains children that have been recycled in different reports. So you can find a girl named Aya who turns up in a report in month, say, August, and she turns up in the next month in 2 different locations. So they are not credible. The SOHR is not credible. Unnamed activists are not credible. Once or twice, maybe, but every time, not credible. So your sources on the ground, you don't have them. As for your agenda, not your, but the agenda of some corporate media, it is the agenda of regime change. How can the New York Times, I was reading it this morning, or how can Democracy Now!, which I was reading the other day, maintain until this day that this is a civil war in Syria? How can they maintain until this day that that the protests were unarmed and nonviolent until, say, 2012? That is absolutely not true. How can they maintain that the Syrian government is attacking civilians in Aleppo when every person that's coming out of these areas occupied by terrorists is saying the opposite? How do I quantify the support of the Syrian people? The elections. In 2014, the Syrian people held elections. The point being, overwhelmingly, the people support President Assad. There are people that want change in the government. We're not pretending they don't want change. Everybody wants change. But in terms of support of the government, the point is they don't see President Assad as the problem. They see the problem as terrorism. They see elements of problems in the system that they have there. But President Assad, they don't see as the problem. They actually overwhelmingly support him. So I'm basing it on their choice in their leader, and I'm basing it on my interactions with people in Syria.
Craig, the reality is there's peace now in Syria. That's an example of what they fear. So anyway, we'll end that subject. Let's take a break and come back for more. Welcome back to the CEC Report. Finally, Uber, a big, fat, parasitical scam. So, Craig, this is something that I've just done a whole bunch of research about. I was already looking into it actually because I saw Uber, this new Uber ride-sharing service, which is taking over the world. I don't here in Australia. It's associated with Macquarie Bank. So what I'm going through is something we reported in last week's Australian Alert Service. The article is actually on our website and on our Facebook page, so people can call in and get it, or get on there and get it. It's entitled Uber Parasite, because that's what this is. Uber there's nothing legitimate about this Uber operation, right? It's presented as what they call disruptive technology, like the car replacing horse and buggy. Garbage, absolute garbage. All real disruptive technology pays for itself because it's a better product, and say like the car could make you go further, faster, right? And just change the world. All Uber does is it's got an app that allows it to get around laws. That's what the app does. It's not a new car, it's not a new mode of transport, you don't get anywhere quicker, you just allowed to get around laws. That's what the app does. Here's the worst bit, it runs at a loss, and a massive loss. $2 billion loss per year, because it employs predatory pricing. They got a model, these idiots in San Francisco started up, they raised a stack load of money from people like Google and from the Saudis now. The terrorism funding Saudi government has just put $3.5 billion into Uber, and that allows this company to pay for its loss-making operation around the world, which has one goal: wipe out existing taxi services. They want to wipe them out, and when they wipe them out, then they'll start charging what they need to make a profit, which is going to be at least quadruple the price, four times.
This is another looting operation, Robbie, consistent with what we published back 20 years ago.
Exactly.
The Mont Pelerin Society, whereby infrastructure, basic economic infrastructure, is now seen as a cash cow, as an income stream. Instead of being there to support the economy, it's now looted. So here you have taxi systems inside various states and inside in the country, which is now
regulated to support the economy and provide a service.
So regulation's bad. You've got to deregulate everything and allow basically the free market.
And the Uber rep in the UK, Craig, is the granddaughter of the founder of the Mont Pelerin Society.
And so, I mean, we don't have any copies of this. This is a very old paper. It's 20 years old. But if people want to call in for a photocopy of it, they can get the original material from us from 20 years ago, Robbie.
Uber's victims are real families. There's some big companies involved in the taxi industry, but much more than that, there's normal small businesses. We live in an area where lots of Greeks and Italians have had taxi services all their life, right? They've invested in it. They've had to buy taxi licenses worth $500,000. That's what they've got up to. Now, it's not to justify the price of those licenses, but they were there. They were provided by the government. They bought them. My son's kindergarten teacher and her husband, preparing for their retirement, he's a taxi driver, they borrowed $500,000 to buy a taxi license. The same government that created the regulation that made it go up to that has now just said they're going to legalise Uber and pay the taxi people to buy back their licenses $100,000 each. So she's going to be ruined, and her husband, for this, and this is being repeated right across Australia and right around the world. This is outrageous. This is not new technology. We're fighting progress. No, we're not fighting progress. This is a predatory scam by a parasitical business model, and it should not be tolerated. And Australians should question why our governments have raced to legalise it, because they're going to run out of money with this model, Craig, if governments don't legalise it, right? But I suspect some politicians are on the take. Anyway, like I said, get on our website and read the article and support your local taxi driver. But that's it for this week's CEC Report. Thanks, Craig.
And for the year.
And for the year.
Thanks
for tuning in, and tune in next week for more.